Well, welcome back to the hot seat. This afternoon, I'm speaking to Jo Leach from Strabons Hall down in Nice. Good afternoon, Jo.
Good afternoon, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So great to have you on today. We're going to have a little chat today about clients considering a move to France and some of the issues that might arise from financial planning, wealth planning. It's a move you've made yourself. Perhaps you could explain a little bit about your move to France and the sort of clients you work with now in your role at Strabons Hall.
So I was working in London about 8 years ago and then offered an opportunity to move down to the south of France, where I always imagined retiring to. I loved it. I came down here as a child, camping in Saint-Tropez, and end of each tax year I used to come over for the tennis as well. So having this opportunity to come down here was fabulous. And it's been a really good decision for so many reasons, in terms of providing excellent advice for expats down here. In terms of the advice circuit down here is very different from the UK. In the UK, there's a lot of very good financial advisors, and we've had retail distribution review happen in 2007, a long time ago. And here it's only really just changing in terms of transparency of charges and costs, and the bar is rising down here, so that clients, expats, people who need financial services are getting a higher and higher level of service, which is great. And we want to raise that bar even higher down here.
Well, thanks for that, Jo. Could you perhaps explain a little bit about the type of clients you work with down in the south of France?
Okay, so they come in three categories, really. They're either in the UK already and moving here. A lot tried to move here before the end of the withdrawal agreement and got in just in time. Others are looking at moving here now and going through the bureaucracy of after Brexit, the situation. So we're helping them sort their finances out in the UK and getting themselves prepared for living in France and having the wonderful life here. Others are already here, and so it's a matter of they're fed up with the financial advisor they've got, or they want somebody else to look after the finances, or they've not had them properly managed and they've finally realised that now they've become part of applying for the carte de residence. They have to do certain things in a certain way, and they want the advice of Strabons Hall as a result. Others are going back to the UK, either not as many because of Brexit. I think a lot of people thought people would go back because of Brexit, but it's not really to do with that. It's more to do with a partner's died or they're not well, and that's one of the reasons why they're heading back. So again, there's things we can do fiscally to manage their affairs and help them in their move.
Well, France has always been a popular destination for Brits to move through their working life or into retirement. When people do make that move, from a financial planning perspective, I suppose one of the first things they look at, I suppose, is a purchase of a house. If they need a mortgage, or I suppose finding the right property depends on the region they're looking in, but what is it that you might look at with them in terms of the finances of that purchase?
Okay, so for most clients, they've already got the house down here, and
right.
then they decide to move down here.
Right, okay.
And so if I can take you back a step, so the first thing to do is really look to ensure that they've utilised all their tax advantages in the UK, because their investments don't work as well in France. So ISAs don't work in France, unit trusts, you don't have the capital gains allowance. So it's important to tidy up your affairs in the UK before you move into France. Right. And then buying a property, absolutely, find the right place, find where you want to live, because it's very expensive to buy property down here in terms of legal costs and estate agent fees, which can be 6%. So in all, it can be quite expensive to buy property down here.
Okay, that's interesting. So if you're going to review their investments, then you might look at, as you say, how they're held, the type of investment they hold. Look at, I suppose, liquidating and reinvesting some of those investments. I mean, how would you go through a sort of portfolio review with someone considering moving to France partway through maybe the UK tax year? How does that tend to play out?
Partway through a tax year is quite complicated, as you said. In France, the tax year is a calendar year, and in UK it's April to April, as you know. and there's the, yeah, so basically, because of the different elements in terms of tax years, there's certain planning you need to do, and also it can maximize or increase the number of tax returns you have to do. So if you're planning on moving to France, it's ideal to do it either just before the end of the UK tax year, or at least halfway through the UK tax year, just starting into the new tax year of France, so end of December, January. And by doing that, then you're keeping your affairs quite simple in terms of tax-wise. The other element is to really look to see whether or not you'll be returning to the UK, or whether you're planning to stay in France forever or retire here, or what your plans are. Because if you're planning on going back to the UK, say in 5 years, you may want to keep your ISAs. But if you're planning on moving to France for forever, or for as long as you know, then definitely makes sense to clean your affairs in the UK, liquidate your ISAs, and liquidate all your tax efficient holdings. And then when you move to France, you have it in a position where you're starting from a clean position.
What about drawing down on pensions? Say if someone's accumulated pensions and they're in their early 60s and they want to start triggering the pension and then making a move, is it relatively easy for them to draw that pension income while they're in France, or is there something that they tend to do to restructure how that is held?
It's a good question, because one of the issues with the UK pensions and drawing down is the currency. So there's a massive difference in currency over the years. We've seen it as high as 160 to the euro, and recently 107 to the euro. And so you can find a very big discrepancy if you haven't got a facility to manage your currency within your pension. So there are pensions that do allow you to have the flexibility, but there aren't very many of them. And so a lot of people will move their pensions to what's called a cure-ops. And that gives you much more flexibility in terms of how you take your drawdown, in terms of the currency you withdraw it in, and also it can put you in a better position in terms of lifetime allowance. So if you've already reached your lifetime allowance limit, or nearly approaching it, and you move the monies across to a cure-ops, then any growth after that is then outside of the lifetime allowance tax situation. So it can be a very good, efficient source of tax planning, but the conversation and the subject's massive. So I'm sorry if I've jumped around.
No, it's worth something, and anyone with a client with pension assets, just worth having a look and exploring it. And outside of pensions, I mean, I know that assurance vie contracts can be very tax efficient ways of holding investments. Perhaps you could explain how someone resident in France might use that kind of contract.
The legal system in France and Europe is different to the UK in that it's very fixed. The UK, similar to the US, is always moving. In France, sorry, if you are in a situation where you're on your second marriage, which a lot of people are nowadays, it can be very costly to leave monies to a stepchild, and the advantages of an assurance fee is that you can leave the monies to whomever you want, and stepchildren or people who are not related to you by blood or through marriage can also benefit from the monies within an insurance fee very tax efficiently. If the monies aren't held in an insurance fee, they can be taxed at high as 60%. So by having it within an insurance fee, you can leave them 152,500, as many beneficiaries as you want. So you could have an estate of 3 million and leave 10 people, 20 people, 100,000 and a bit more, 152,000, and there'll be no tax payable, no succession tax payable. So.
And do sometimes Brit clients over in France sort of neglect to update wills and things like that? I know that's not specifically your area, but in the broader sort of sense of wealth planning, getting those things right must be also very important to do.
It's really important. You can just have the one will, but it's highly recommended to have a will in the country where you have the assets. It's not essential, but it is advisable, because it just clears things up. So because the UK lawyer understands UK law, French lawyers understand French law, and so the French assets are then assessed under the French regime, and it just helps the situation at a time when you don't really need any more problems or hassles, and you're already feeling very sad, or your estate or your family are. So yes, I would recommend having a will in each of the different countries where you've got assets.
I mean, what are some of the things you wish you'd known before you moved out, or what are some of the things that you see time and again that are a surprise to people?
It's a good question, because that's the thing, moving down here, I had so many problems myself, and so I can try and prevent my clients from having those same problems, and many of it is just simply trying to understand that it's just, yeah, sorry.
I sprung that one on you, so I mean, you can just have a pause and just start again, and we can.
Let me think of a problem I had there. It's just more like it's probably, yeah, it might be easier, just because I was going to say as well, I feel like Cilla Black sometimes, in terms of my job isn't just being a financial advisor, it's also marriage counsellor and getting people to get married. Yeah, because of going back to the previous point, and again, sorry, I think I really garbled on that previous one.
Right.
Is that if you're not married here and you have a partner that isn't in a pact relationship, then you have a 60% tax liability for them too. And so often I'm there telling people to get married very quickly because otherwise they'll have very big tax liabilities if they want to leave monies to their partner that they're living with but not married to or pacts to.
Okay. Okay. Well, why don't I think if I kind of restate that question, is that things you thought you would have wish you would have known? Is that valid?
I'm not married. That's the problem. So it's not a problem that I've come across. It's just I think the problem is just administration, getting used to the banks closing the doors and getting used to how things work.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll weave that in. So from an estate planning perspective, in the UK, being married confers substantial benefit for transfers on death between spouses. Does that hold true in France as well, in terms of when people are looking at their affairs and the impact of death of one of the spouse?
Yeah, absolutely. Even more so. I find myself a bit like Cilla Black in terms of matchmaking and encouraging clients to get married. Simply, if we don't have the same allowances in the UK, you can leave £325,000 to anyone you want without paying any tax. In France, that's not the case. So if you're not married or not in a pact with your girlfriend, boyfriend, then you can't leave them anything or very, very little without paying substantial amounts of tax on the monies that you give them. So they can be liable to taxes of up to 60% on everything that is passed on to them. So yes, I'm very much marriage counsellor, not marriage counsellor, but encouraging people to get married.
Okay, well, thank you for that overview. I mean, 8 years ago, you struck out from the city and you went down to the south of France to follow your dream to be living down there. Yeah. What did you find in terms of, you're obviously working down there, so you're having to engage with other businesses, kind of get things done. What do you think people's expectations are around, business culture and the way that we operate as Brits, the way that the French society and economy works? Is there anything there that you think was any of that a surprise, or how does that play out for you in being a businesswoman down in the south of France?
So France has really changed actually over the last 8 years since I've been down here. When I first came down here, it was very much, it still is to a certain extent, but less so, in terms of things close at midday. One thing that really shocked me when I first came here was August. Everything just closes in August, and how does things work still in August when everything shuts? But I love the nuances of France, and many of my clients love it too, or some don't. But and they speak French very well, but it's those nuances that worries them, and they just don't want to make that slightest mistake with their money. And so that's why they tend to come to us rather than a French advisor, because the
Mm.
French advisor is fabulously French and does it very much the French way, whereas
Mm.
the Brits are used to doing it the British way, having the service that they're used to, and doing it in the manner and having everything very transparent and explained to them ever so clearly. And yeah, so they just have that English service, so to say, by having the Stravens Hall.
Great. Well, look, great to chat to you today, Joan. I look forward to sharing this video with our members.
Thank you very much for your time.